Alright, so this is going to be part 4 to what if Deku had John's powers from Unordinary. So with that being said, let's just roll the intro. Alright, so before we get this what if started, I'd like to say a few announcements. That being that my review of Unordinary should come out tomorrow, as well as part 4 of UA year 1, but I'm not too sure about that. And yeah, and at the end of the video, I'm gonna talk about COPPA and how that's gonna affect my channel. I think it's COPPA or COPPA, basically. And yeah, if you want to know what my thoughts on that is, just stick to the end of the video, I guess. So last time I gave you guys a like goal of 100 likes within the day, and you guys actually did that, so that's why I'm doing part 4. So I'm not gonna do a like goal for this video because tomorrow I'm gonna do the review as well as doing maybe other what ifs. And yeah, so in the last part we just got done with the USJ. So in this one we're going over the sports festival, and yeah, I'm gonna try to go over all of the sports festival and I'll try to break it up into 2 parts like I usually do. So yeah, so we would start off in the classroom, and this is when Aizawa would tell the students that there's actually going to be something called the sports festival coming up soon, and with this they have a chance to have an internship with an actual hero, right? And he tells them to make sure that they go to the right agency that they want to, the right hero for the internship, because a lot of people actually do regret what they say, or not what they say, what they pick as their internship. So Deku's kind of thinking of like, okay, who can I actually go for, right? And he's thinking about this, right? And in this part of the story, or in this what if, I don't think I'm gonna give Deku one for all, because he doesn't have that mindset that that All Might's looking for, right? He has almost the opposite. So he's not gonna really go for Deku in this one. I think he would still go for Mirio. So that's what we're gonna go with for this what if. So Deku would be thinking, and before he figures out who he would go with, this is when he would we could do a little time skip, and this is when we're at lunch, and instead of going to the regular lunch with All Might in normal canon, we would actually just have him be in the cafeteria, and this is where more people would start approaching him, this being Uraraka and Ida, just like last time. Someone else would also sit down next to them, and this would be Momo. So they would try to have conversation with Deku, and he would kind of shrug it off a little bit, but they would still continue the conversation anyways. So they would start off with basically asking Deku what's his kind of plan for the sports festival, and he never really thought about it. He thought he would tell him that I'm gonna look at everyone else's training and see what they do and make my plan around that. And then they switch over to the kind of conversation about why did they become a hero or want to become a hero, and they would all kind of go around and basically tell each other why. For Deku, I think he would want to change how the people of their society think about people who are quirkless and powerless, right? And Uraraka would tell Deku about how she wants to become a hero so she can make a lot of money for her parents, right? And Deku's kind of I think he'd really like that kind of idea of helping other, because throughout his life he's been, he's seen a lot of fake people and a lot of insincere people, but hearing people or hearing stories like Uraraka's gives him a little bit more hope in humanity, right? So Deku would kind of keep this in mind for future reference, so he kind of knows people who to trust, like which people to trust, right? And Momo, the reason why she's there is that she is, the vice representative, so she needs to get along with the representative of the class, that being Deku, and she knows that he has his troubling mentality and she wants to change it as well. So during the kind of week that they have for training, Deku would he would observe the other students, right, and how they use their quirks and things like that. So what he would do is that he would train his body a lot during this kind of period and not really focus too much on his quirk, since all he has to do, since it's always going to be a mirror match in terms of fighting, all he has to do is just improve his body and have it be better than theirs, because his quirk is always going to be better. That's just how his kind of quirk works, right? So since they do have that kind of week off to train, Deku in his spare time, let's say he was going out in town to run a few errands, right? Or yeah, so he would do this, and in the process of doing this, he would find a woman getting robbed. She's getting robbed by a villain with a quirk, and let's say that quirk is actually some sort of speed quirk, right? So he would steal her purse, let's say, and he would activate his quirk, and he would start running fast. Deku would see this and activate his own quirk, right? And what he would do, since he would be faster, he'd be able to catch up. And what he would do is that he would run alongside the kind of person, the purse snatcher, and basically kick him towards a dark alley that'd be on the side of the street where they would be running towards. And since he was knocked back in there, this is where the kind of robber would try to fight back, since he was backed up into a corner. He said, "Hey kid, you don't want to get this, you don't want to make this ugly, because I'm an adult and I'll be easily be able to defeat you here, right?" And this is where Deku would be like, scum like you really think they could beat me, right? I go to UA, and this is where the kind of robber would actually get a little bit scared, since UA turns out some of the best heroes. So this is where the kind of robber would like, "You asked for this," and I think he would pull out a knife, and this is where he would use his kind of super speed and run towards Deku. Deku would be able to react to it, since his speed would be a lot faster, and what he would do is basically push the hand out of the way, or push the knife kind of out of the way, and kind of elbow him in the stomach, right? This would cause the kind of robber to be go to the floor on his knees from kind of the wind going out of his lungs that kind of fast by being elbowed, right? So Deku would take the purse, and he wouldn't be done with the robber. As the robber is kind of on the ground, kind of on his knees, basically gasping for air, this is when Deku would kind of hit him and kick him in the side, and this would knock him against the wall. And this is when Deku would start kind of getting brutal with him, since Deku does have those violent tendencies. And he would basically tell this guy, like, "You think just because you have power, you're able to use it and abuse it against others?" And he would actually like grab the robber by the hair and actually smash his face into the wall. And as that's done, Deku would get a little bit of blood on his hands because of it. And this is where he would kind of scrape it on or he would rub it off on the person's or the robber's kind of clothes, and he would leave with the wallet, and he would bring it back to the woman, and basically he would act as if he was the complete opposite of himself, act really nice and act very innocent, right? He said he would tell her that, oh, he was able to catch him and take the purse before he noticed, and ran back as fast as he could. And she would ask him, if she should call the cops, and Deku would be like, "No, I think he's suffered enough." And she would be like, "What do you mean?" And he would be like, "Oh, don't worry about it." So Deku would kind of leave and have that kind of taste for that kind of violence, right? We would get to the kind of day of the sports festival, and we would be in that kind of waiting room, waiting for the waiting for it to get started. And what happens is that Todoroki actually tells or does that kind of confrontation between Deku again, and basically tells Deku that even though he could copy powers, that's not going to stop me from winning, because if you can't copy my power, then there's no way that you could beat me. And Deku would be like, I'm not sure about that, but either way, I'm going to win, even if you don't use your quirk. And this is what kind of Todoroki doesn't really show any anger, but he is somewhat mad, but not to the extent that other characters would be, since he has that kind of he doesn't really care what Deku thinks. So yeah, Bakugo doesn't really interrupt them, since he doesn't want to be he doesn't really mess with Deku really. So we would get to the point where they would go outside and they would deliver the speech. So since Deku got number 1 in this what if, he would do the speech instead of Bakugo. So his speech would be a little bit different than it is in canon, or than what, since Deku didn't do the speech in canon, than what normally Deku would say, right? Since Deku is very I guess positive. He would basically begin with he would address the kind of classes, all the hero courses, right? And he would tell them, like, look at yourselves, right? You have no guarantee that you're going to win. Any student here has the possibility of winning. So if you think just because you have a strong quirk, you're going to win, that's not going to always be the case, right? And he would tell those who think they're weak to stand up against those who appear to be strong, because they can make a difference, right? And he kind of tells us, and the crowd would kind of I think they would cheer for this, because it is trying to bring those seen as underdogs kind of raise the bar for them, basically. So as this is done, we would get to the first event, that being the cavalry battle. So Deku would stand kind of in the back so that he could see everyone's different quirks, right? So as Midnight would say, 3, 2, 1, go. This is when everyone would rush towards the kind of gateway, getting stuck in the process. Then Todoroki and Bakugo would rush towards the front, as well as the other class, or the other students from class 1A. Deku would see the different kind of quirks that they would have. So he would see both Todoroki and Bakugo's, so he would copy them. He would do that kind of he would use the ice to kind of go over the rest of the students, as well as using the kind of explosions to make him go faster. So with Todoroki, it's kind of weird how his power works, or how the interaction between John's powers and his powers would work, because if Todoroki only shows his ice side, would John be able to use the fire side as well, or would it just be the ice side only? But Todoroki's kind of quirk is considered one quirk, right? Since it's half hot, half cold, it's still technically one quirk. So that's kind of a thing to think about, but I'm not too sure whether or not Deku should be able to use both powers at once, or be able to use them, or count them as one. So you guys can tell me down in the comments down below. So yeah. So Todoroki would meet up with the kind of 0-pointer and freeze it, just how he does in canon, to kind of show off. And Deku would get a major kind of speed boost with the ice and the explosions combined. And then he would see Ida running as well, so he would copy his quirk as well. So he's basically using both the engine jets as well as the ice and explosions to kind of speed up his kind of running speed, basically, or his kind of, I don't know what you would call it, sliding speed, since he isn't really moving his legs too much. Kind of how like Iceman and Todoroki kind of slide on their ice. So that's what he's doing. So when we get to the kind of the minefield, since he has such a lead, he wouldn't need to have his ice on the ground like Todoroki needed to kind of have that speed. So he'd be able to make his ice go above the minefield, just how Todoroki's able to do it in different parts of My Hero, or he's able to kind of use his ice to go above the ground. So yeah, that's basically what Deku would do, and he would go over the minefield pretty easily, and this is where he would get first place. This followed by Todoroki and Bakugo for third, or second and third respectively. So we would then get to the kind of cavalry battle, right? The teams for the cavalry battle would be the same, since there's no real reason to change them. This would be Tokoyami, Uraraka, and Mai, I think she's called, and Deku as the head. The other teams would be the same. So Deku would choose these ones, so that's or choose these people because they're really the only people that would accept, since the other people in Class 1A don't really like Deku, and people don't really know what his quirk is, so they're hesitant to go for him, right? So Todoroki would go for Deku since he has the biggest kind of lead, and Bakugo, or he would use his ice to kind of trip up Deku, so he would get close enough to get the headband, right? So they would do this a few times, and Deku's basically on the defensive at this point. And as this ice keeps on going, keeps trying to strike Deku more and more times, this is when Bakugo would kind of interrupt it and try to go for Todoroki, or try to go for Deku as well. But he would miss a few times, and then as he's getting distracted, this was when Monoma would actually go and take his headband, just how he does in canon. So Bakugo, for the rest of the kind of cavalry battle, would be focused on getting Monoma back. So they would still have that kind of fight between the two, and this is where Deku and Todoroki would kind of be clashing towards each other. So what Todoroki would do, Ida would basically, or he would have Ida do this reciprocal burst and try to go for Deku once again. But what would happen instead, Todoroki would actually miss the kind of headband, and the reason for this is that Deku would copy Dark Shadow and basically use that, or as a more enhanced version, to basically block the grab from Todoroki. And what he would do after Todoroki would be behind him is use the ice to, or freeze the ground to basically trap them, just how Todoroki did at the beginning of the obstacle course with the other team. So since they'd be stuck, and Deku's not really going for anyone, he's just kind of trying to run down the time, which he does successfully with this. The timer would go off, and this is where it would end, with Deku being number 1, Todoroki still being number 2, and Bakugo being in third, since he would have gotten those headbands from Monoma. So we would get to the kind of the tournament part of the kind of the sports festival, and Ojiro would still tell Deku about not Shiro. Is it Shiro? Oh no, it's Shinso. Shinso's kind of mind control power, and Deku would be wary of this since his fight is going to be with him. So we would get into the ring, or into the ring, and the first fight would be why do I keep saying that? Shinso versus Deku, right? And Shinso would talk about Deku and how it must be great to be born with such an amazing power, right? And how easy it would be to become a hero. And Deku's really sympathetical with Shinso because of this, but at the same time, he does get a little bit angry, talking about how he wasn't born with such amazing power and things like that. But since he has his aura manipulation as his power, he does know when people are using their powers, so he doesn't speak. Instead, he would use his ice powers to basically freeze the floor around him, and when by technical I don't know what you would call it. Basically, he wouldn't be able to move, so he would win. Todoroki's just looking at this, and he's angry that Deku would copy his power, and to this extent, right? Because Deku's freeze or ice powers would be a lot stronger than that of Todoroki. So the other fights go pretty much the same. So we would get to the fight with Todoroki and Deku. So in this one, Deku does know that Todoroki's somewhat holding back. He would basically tell Todoroki that, he's holding back. I know your father's endeavor, and yet you have ice powers. I know you have something more to that, because I could tell with my aura manipulation. So he basically he knows that he's holding back, and Todoroki's kind of angry that he would even bring this up, since he doesn't want to use his father's quote-unquote power to win. And this is when Deku would basically use Ida's quirk. I think it's called like engine legs or something like that, and basically run towards Todoroki and basically blitz him. This is when Todoroki would try to use his ice, but it really wouldn't be too effective, since Deku as well has explosion to blow up each of the ice. And he would get up to Todoroki and basically just sucker punch him in the face. He would tell Todoroki that if you're not going to use your full power, you have no chance of winning, right? And this is kind of to trick Todoroki into using his power. So what I think would happen in this situation, in terms of John's powers, I think that since his power is kind of two different things, since Todoroki's quirk is like two different things in one, I would say that Todoroki would have to show both of them for Deku to copy both, but it would still count as one power, if that makes sense. I don't know if you guys agree with that or not, but for now we're just going to go with that assumption. So Todoroki, out of frustration, I think would use his quote-unquote father's quirk and use his fire side. This is when Deku would copy it, and this is where Todoroki would charge up his kind of fire, just how we would do in the anime, and Deku would see this as a good opportunity to basically use all of his powers at once. So he does a kind of modified version of the howitzer impact. He goes up into the air, and what he does is he has Dark Shadow engulf him, just how it does normally, as well as he would use the the leg engines to help him with his speed to spin, and he would use the explosion to help with the spin as well. He would also combine that with the fire from Todoroki. So yeah, this is where he does that kind of I don't know what you would call it, since it has so many different quirks, but yeah, like I said before, since Todoroki showed both sides of his quirk, we could count this as one power, and it doesn't go over the limit of 4 for John's powers. So he still has 4 powers technically copied, that being Bakugo's explosion, Ida's leg engines, and Dark Shadow, as well as half cold, half hot, half hot, half cold. And yeah, that's technically 4 powers. So he does this howitzer impact right as Todoroki does that kind of giant fire beam, I guess. I don't know what you would call it. But yeah, since he does have Dark Shadow, he would, and it is an improved one, even though he still has that weakness to light, he would still have that kind of defense towards him, as well as using the explosions, a amped up version of the explosions, as well as the fire that Todoroki's using, as well as the speed for the kind of the spin. There would be really no way for Todoroki to beat this. Todoroki would be easily knocked out of the ring, giving the win to Deku. Next would be the fight with Bakugo, and Bakugo's he is somewhat scared of Deku, since he had the incident back in middle school when he used to bully him. like Bakugo used to bully Deku, and then, since part 1, how the story goes, so I'm not gonna really explain it again. So there isn't too many there hasn't been too many occasions where Bakugo has stood up to Deku that many times in this what if. So Deku is basically, or Bakugo is pretty much ready to try to go his absolute hardest to beat Deku, but since Deku has so many quirks, he doesn't know if he could do it. So what Bakugo does is that he tries to kind of make Deku go on the defensive by rushing him with kind of explosions, and also kind of punches with explosions in them. So what happens is that Deku's pretty much easily able to dodge him using the kind of engine legs to kind of speed up his movements a little bit, at least in his legs, but he has naturally good reflexes since he always trains his body. So what would happen is that Bakugo would use the explosion to basically make a smoke screen and try to get Deku from behind, but it wouldn't really work since aura manipulation knows or lets the person know where people are using their powers at, so Deku would know that it's coming from behind, and this is where he would basically elbow Bakugo in the face, causing him to stumble back. This is when Bakugo would have to, I guess he would basically use what Deku did before. I think it was back when he bullied him. He used the P shot, or armor piercing shot, or AP shot. I believe that's what it's called. I forgot when exactly Deku used it. I think it was during the entry exams. So we could say that Bakugo would have seen it, since it was a large explosion, and he would have done something similar. So he would do that kind of hand movement to kind of shoot an AP shot towards Deku. Deku would have a kind of a bit of layer of ice go in front of him, as well as Dark Shadow to block the hits. So it would go through the ice and kind of stop at Dark Shadow. So as this is going on, this is when Bakugo would get into the air and do a howitzer impact towards Deku. So what Deku would do is that he would do a combination of an explosion as well as the fire to kind of it's basically what would have happened if Todoroki used his fire against Bakugo, but it's a lot more amped up. So they would have this giant explosion with fire in the mix, and they would have Cementos basically block out a lot of the explosion from the audience so they wouldn't get hurt, just how it does in canon with Deku versus Todoroki. Again, with this fight, since it is almost a mirror match, Deku would win this since his explosion combined with fire is a lot stronger than that of Bakugo, but he would still be somewhat hurt since he didn't have Dark Shadow kind of protecting him. And so Deku would be declared the winner, and Bakugo would be in second, while Todoroki would be in third. So All Might would give him all 3 different medals, and he would basically give him some advice, that being to Deku to kind of change the way he looks at the world and kind of reevaluate his kind of morals, right? He would tell Bakugo to kind of try to be calm and collective in a fight, and he would tell Todoroki about how he should use his fire more often and switch between offense and defense and things like that. So with that being kind of said, this part is going to be kind of the end of this video, but I'm still going to talk about COPPA and basically how that's going to affect my channel. So if you don't know what COPPA is, it's a abbreviation. I forgot, it's like the Child Protection Act or something like that. And it's basically there to protect children's kind of information online, and what they mean by children is anyone under the age of 13, right? And this is affecting YouTube a lot because obviously there's a large portion of audiences that are under the age of 13 that watch YouTube, and the problem is that there's these things called targeted ads, which basically uses your information to directly to kind of guide advertisements to that particular person. And because of that, it's kind of this complicated situation where people who make children's content can't really have targeted ads because of the Protection Act, and it recently got updated, so that's why they're kind of going after YouTube, since there is a lot of people who make that kind of content. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is that it affects a lot of YouTubers, especially people who have that kind of content that's in between children and kind of teenagers / adults. And I think a lot of what if YouTubers kind of land in that kind of gray area, since although we don't really, a lot of us don't really curse, at least I don't really curse in my videos, and the subject matters that I talk about aren't very controversial, but at the same time, it's not like I target my stuff to kids, right? If you check the kind of age rating for My Hero and Black Clover, it's PG-13, right? So that means anyone that's 13 and above. But there is kind of, I don't know how you would say, there's like some indicators that would show you that you are making content for kids, right? And that one of them is animation and things like that. And you can't really consider this kind of content for kids, right? I don't make it for kids, and a lot of my audience is not under 13, but there are some obviously that are under 13. And the reason why it's a big problem for a lot of content creators is because you can get fined if you don't mark your videos appropriately. So you can mark your videos as either being kid friendly or not being kid friendly. And if you are kid friendly, then you're missing out on a lot of features. They're going to remove a lot of features from those channels, as well as getting very low AdSense. And if you say that you're not child friendly, then that's okay. But then they could go and decide that your channel is in fact for kids, and then you'll get fined, like, what was it, like 40,000? Around that. And that could be a lot. That's obviously is a lot and that's like per video. So for me, I marked my channel as not for kids. If I went to my analytics, most of the people who watch me are above 13. So that's really the reason why I did that as well. It's not like I make content for kids, like I said before. Especially if you look at stuff like my reviews or my kind of edits that I do, they're not meant for kids. And a lot of times I do talk about series that are not made for kids as well. So, but someone in the FTC could say that my video is meant for kids, and I could be fined. But I think one of my saving graces for this channel is that my intro does have some cursing in it, and I do have a lot of other intros from like one season runs that do have a lot of curse words in it. So that could actually save my channel. But who knows? They could just see that, oh, it's talking about anime's for kids. You should have marked it as for kids. So it is very hard to say whether or not I get fined for that. But who knows? Also, there is a petition that you can go and sign. I signed it myself, and hopefully, if I remember to, I might put it in the description in this one. So yeah, for those wondering whether or not it's going to affect my channel, it probably won't affect my channel, but it's not really up to me, right? It is up to YouTube and things like that. But if you want to change it, help change it, and kind of stop this from happening, you can go and sign it. So with that being said, it's going to be the end of the video.